All right, friends, we're going to get started. Can everybody hear? Oh, there we go. There we go. Where's Captain Bill? Captain Bill. Calling Captain Bill. He's coming. Have a seat.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
How you been? That's growing down here, man.
Guys are here. So happy.
Have you been
so
out?
good.
Have you been out on the boat with the new boat we got, Sea Clovis?
No, I haven't done.
It's
Tell
where,
me you
it's
wanna
where
go
by the
out.
way, you know how many bodies you can find every time you go out?
Well, maybe we'll fix that in the process, too.
Well, the Illuminati.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I am Sean LaTourette, the Commissioner of Environmental Protection for the state of New Jersey. And I am grateful to all of you here for joining us. Folks can certainly feel free to take a seat if you'd like. You know, we're here at Laurel Hill Park in Secaucus for those that may be watching from home along the banks of the Hackensack River. Where on behalf of Governor Murphy, we are here today proudly to declare this administration's commitment to the cleanup of the Hackensack River. Historically, it's a historically significant asset to this state, an incredible natural resource that has been left polluted for far too long. And to do this kind of work, which will be long and hard, you need partners. Fierce allies in Washington who stand for the best interests of this state, who convey our values in the halls of Congress, and who work to secure the resources necessary to do big things. You need determined advocates who hold us accountable to those values and keep us conscious of the needs of the environment we share. So I'm especially proud to be joined by three of these fighters today. Congressman Bill Pascrell from the 9th District, problem solver Congressman Josh Gottheimer from the 5th, and the ever-dedicated Hackensack Riverkeeper, Captain Bill Sheehan. You know, New Jersey is fortunate to have been the cradle of the Industrial Revolution here in the United States. We, through the innovation and ingenuity of New Jerseyans past, we created the incandescent light bulb and harnessed the power of water to drive industry, and so much more. But that important and worthwhile industrial legacy also leaves behind environmental impacts that we must still reckon with today. You know, because of industry of the past and some present, the Hackensack River is polluted with contaminants including mercury and PCBs and other toxic and hazardous substances. The lower portion of the Hackensack River, the 23 tidally influenced miles from the Oradell Dam in Bergen County to the mouth of the river at Newark Bay in Hudson County, need our attention and our help. This area of the Hackensack River was once home to heavy industry. It's bounded by known contaminated sites, and its immediate watershed hosts 9 Superfund sites impacted by contaminants strikingly similar to those that we find in the main stem of this river. As early as the 1920s, bathing in the Hackensack River was banned by local health officials. And to this date, fish consumption, due to high levels of PCBs and mercury, is still prohibited. These adverse environmental impacts that responsible parties have the power to correct, and that should no longer impair the public's right to the full use and enjoyment of their natural resources. And so today, on behalf of Governor Murphy, the NJDEP is formally nominating the lower Hackensack River to be listed on the National Priorities List. If this request is accepted by the Environmental Protection Agency, and we have every expectation that it will, the lower Hackensack River will become a federal Superfund site. And with that designation comes the power of federal law and the access to resources necessary to hold accountable those who have contributed to the contamination of this river. Now, I understand that there are some who may bristle at the designation of another Superfund site in the state of New Jersey, where we have the most in the country, seeing that label as a mark of indignity. But I believe the opposite is true, that a Superfund designation is instead a mark of our resolve, an acknowledgement that modern society, for all its advancements, for all its conveniences, also produces environmental ills that we together have the power to correct. And so, in doing that, we can create incredible benefits that improve our communities, that promote public health. Because while our primary objective is the protection of human health and the environment, the remediation of a Superfund site results in so many other positive impacts. The reuse of vacant or underutilized property, for example, the advancement of technologies to perform cleanups in the first place, improvements to local and regional economies. So, to be clear, the Murphy administration's commitment to the cleanup of this river it also presents, we believe it also presents an incredible opportunity to enrich the communities throughout the Hackensack watershed as we defend the public's right to the full use and enjoyment of their natural resources. But this first step, it's just the beginning, right? There's much hard work ahead. If the US EPA lists this river as a Superfund site, the cleanup process would be led in the first instance by the federal government. But my colleagues and I at the Department of Environmental Protection will be steadfast partners in that work, with leaders like my Assistant Commissioner for Site Remediation, Mark Peterson, our Director of Remediation Management, who's here today, Ken Clue, and his chiefs, Fred Mumford and Wayne Howitz, and so many folks who have made the protection of our environment the cause of their lives. We will have the backs of this community, and we will push for the best possible outcome for this cleanup, for the best in the best interest of this state. You know, as I shared with Governor Murphy when he asked me to serve as Commissioner of Environmental Protection, I firmly believe that we are charting a new course for the future with a cleaner and more just environment at its center. What we do here, how we clean up this river, it's part of that future. It's a future that demands we protect our environment as we promote growth. A future where we're refusing to make false choices between a healthy environment and a healthy economy. It's a future of partnership where there's no one industrial villain who seeks to pollute and plunder, and there is no one conservationist with a monopoly on virtue. Because just like the river beneath us, the water we drink, and the air we breathe, we are all interconnected. Because the environmental challenges of any one New Jersey community are a challenge to our entire New Jersey community. And we only do this together. It is my honor to introduce Congressman Bill Pascrell next, who has been a fierce advocate for the protection of our natural resources. And I am so grateful, Congressman, that you've joined us here today.
Commissioner, you're a breath of fresh air. I mean that sincerely. Good morning, everyone, in beautiful Laurel Park in Secaucus, New Jersey. Who would have thought? Look at this. But the water is terrible. And we're going to do something about it. We tried, as you know, 3 years ago, Josh and I. But the commissioner in New Jersey at that time was out to lunch. And we pursued it and continued to pursue it. And now's the right time, right, Assemblyman? This is the time to do this right now. And you guys, Commissioner, picked the perfect day. Didn't he, Captain?
I asked Bill, and he let it be.
He let it be.
Tropical paradise of sea
I know. 3 years ago, my good friend, and she did such a sensational job as the regional director of EPA, and I don't forget those things, Judith Enck. And she requested from the state of New Jersey their input into the fact that she would assist the request and do what we're doing today. And the answer on the other side was nothing. And that's a shame. So I like to put things into perspective, and I thank her. She's no longer there. She's the former regional director. We got to remember those people who tried to help us here in New Jersey. And I'll never forget her. I think she's up in New York State right now. So the report of the EPA at that time was not a good one. We are laced, this river, with dozens of toxic contaminants from Newark Bay North to the Ordell Reservoir. And it contains elevated levels of cadmium, lead, mercury, cancer-causing dioxin, and PCBs. That's quite a combination. Quite a combination. So North Jersey was the cradle of the Industrial Revolution, when machinery is brought here from England and other countries to begin the process of manufacturing. Our great cities and towns were sustained by manufacturing and commerce. And when the legacy of industry leaves its mark, it is up to those same industries to clean up the mess they made. That sounds good. Activists and community members, some of whom are here today, and I salute them for their perseverance. And you've known for a long time that the mighty Hackensack River is laced with toxic poisons. After too long, communities up and down this river have suffered while people dragged their feet. Poor leadership and neglect shrugged at the dilemma. So you have two choices. You have a choice to either persist and go on or yield and back off. Josh and I were not sent to Washington to yield and back off. We don't yield on anything. I mean, in Italian we say the real trapadost. You got a hard head, and my head is just as hard too.
It's true.
Thank you for agreeing with me. For too long, we've waited. But thanks to Commissioner LaTourette and the Phil Murphy administration, those days are behind us. And I want to, again, thank the Commissioner for requesting the Hackensack River be added to the national priorities list. And we hope that once approved by the EPA, a federal-state partnership can commence the work of cleaning up this river. And I know it's a very frustrating job watching the Passaic take so long to clean up, and we're worse than you are. But it's got to get done, and you've decided to take it on. So with the right plan, I believe our region can realize the powerful economic, environmental, and recreational benefits the Hackensack River has to offer. At the Burries Creek tributary, just up the river, the EPA plan to remove polluted sediments is fast approaching. Designating the Hackensack as a site itself can help coordinate and expand that work. We know that restoration efforts do not always move as quickly as we'd like. You look at the slow process, again, at the lower Passaic River and see a long road ahead. But we're taking the correct step right now. I think we could take several lessons from our experience on the Passaic. I think, you can look in the Passaic River at night and see I call it the Illuminati, the fish light up from the mercury. And why it was a joke way back, it's not a joke to see that anymore. I mean, sometimes people lit up, and that's how we find, people in a river. This decision should have happened 2 years ago. Today, it reminds us that it matters who is in charge. You must have leaders who will stand up and do the right thing. Governor Murphy has. He hasn't talked and done nothing. He's talked and acted. And Commissioner LaTourette, I meant it when I said a breath of fresh air, because that's what we need in order to get these things done. I expect the department to work closely with our mayors and our community leaders and all those who live and work near the river. We must make sure every voice is heard as we begin this endeavor. We have a role in Washington, too. Cleaning up dilapidated and dangerously contaminated sites remains one of my top priorities. And let me tell you something, there's enough opposition there, and you have to expect that. People are protecting their interests. But we will remain vigilant and not allow any more inaction. In fact, one of my goals is reauthorizing the Superfund tax on polluting industries. Nobody's one that wants to talk about it, right? No one. Garden State residents should not have to carry the financial burden of remediating orphan sites. So I'm thankful to see so many people here today. Keep pushing. And we want to keep pushing to clean up the Hackensack River. You made this happen. Believe me, you did. And this is your victory, not ours. Let's get to work. Thank you for coming today, folks. It really sends a great message. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. I think you put something really, really important in perspective with respect to the type of partnership we need at every level of government, right? From the state and our Department of Environmental Protection, our Department of Health, our Department of Community Affairs, our governor's office, but our partnership with the EPA. And we have partners there. We always have, right? Make no mistake that while there were disagreements at the tippity top as between our government or myself and our governor and myself and prior leaders of that agency, the career staff at the Environmental Protection Agency they're just like ours here at DEP. They are stalwart protectors of our environment, and they deserve our support as well. And the other thing that deserves our support, and I know the congressman here and Senator Booker and Menendez with respect to infrastructure are so supportive. And I can't let a moment go by without saying that environmental infrastructure, whether we're talking about the mechanisms needed to clean up this river, enhance our water infrastructure, build climate resilience, and reduce emissions, every single one of those things is jobs. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Congressman Gottheimer, I think you might have a little bit more to say about that.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much, Commissioner. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. As Bill said, we're all very grateful for your leadership, as well as the governor's leadership, and we wouldn't be here today without you. And I do want to also acknowledge we've got, besides my very dear friend Bill Pascrell, who gave me an hour-long visa to be here today in his district. So I'm very grateful. I won't use it. I'll try to keep it close. I do want to thank Captain Bill for your phenomenal leadership. Former Speaker Prieto is right here. I want to thank him. Secaucus Councilman McGeever is here, and Garbacio is here, and former Westwood Mayor Berkner is here as well, and I want to thank all of them. We're here this morning, as Bill said, in Laurel Park and Secaucus because it's absolutely critical that we take the right steps to protect our water, our wildlife, and of course, all parts of our environment, like our air and open spaces as well. We're here because we must fight to clean up and protect our local waters, particularly the lower Hackensack River, to stand by and look out for our communities right now and for generations to come. That means pretty simply, no more waste, no more contamination, no more illegal dumping. It's long time we turn this around, and that's exactly why we're here. Thankfully, we're gathered to announce the proposal, as you heard, for the lower Hackensack River to be included in the federal government's Superfund cleanup program. This river snakes from Oradell Dam to the Newark Bay and flows past great 5th District communities like River Edge, Hackensack, Oradell, Teaneck, Bogota, and others. And as you also heard, it's been contaminated from numerous sources over the years, including a mercury processing facility in Carlstad and Woodridge, a chemicals facility in East Rutherford, Standard Chlorine in Kearney, and Scientific Chemical Processing in Carlstadt. The Hackensack River was once thought to be one of the most polluted watercourses in the entire nation. In the entire nation, that is. And as you heard, that was a result of the Industrial Revolution and the toxins that poured into Jersey and permeated this river. Sadly, the sight of dead fish and wildlife, not to mention cans and everything else, washing ashore in Newark Bay and along the banks of this river have become far too common. It gives new meaning, as Bill will appreciate, to the Jersey phrase, swimming with the fishes. You know, the river has been polluted by industry dumpers for so long that even Bill Pascrell doesn't remember when it was clean. And as I said, this goes back to the 20s, as we heard from the commissioner. The river was too dirty to swim and to fish. But thanks to local conservancy groups, many of them are here, and I want to thank them as well, and the Clean Water Act, the Hackensack River saw some recovery earlier this century, but as you heard, we have far more to do. What we know is that protecting our environment should be something that everybody, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, can come together around. It is not a partisan issue. It's just a what's good for Jersey families issue. That's why I'm so proud to be joining my colleague Bill today and everyone here, standing shoulder to shoulder with leaders from across New Jersey to fight to protect and clean up our local waters so that one day we can swim here, we can fish here, and not worry if in the years to come of waste and dumping will continue to hurt our communities. Through vital cooperation between the state of New Jersey and the federal government and the EPA, we're here to make sure that these waters are included in the federal Superfund program. And through this Superfund designation, this will bring critical resources to more fully boost our cleanup efforts and to protect our wonderful communities that line this river too. That's what the law requires. It makes people responsible for the contamination, pay those contaminators to pay to clean it up, so that our families no longer have to face the consequences of gross negligence by certain large companies. At the federal level, we must make sure that we continue to support our Superfund program. It's why, with Bill, we fought so hard to make sure that we've always stood by this program. It's why I fought so hard as co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus to include additional investment in the Superfund program in the bipartisan infrastructure package that is just days away from its vote in the Senate. And for Jersey's sake and for our children's sake, we must get that bipartisan infrastructure package signed into law. New Jersey has historically been left with the most Superfund sites out of every state in the country. During my time in Congress, like Bill, I've been fighting to claw back as many resources as we can to Jersey to invest in the Superfund program so that we can safely clean up toxic sites across the state. We have more than 110 cleanup sites here in Jersey, the most of any state, 110 of them. such as the Ringwood Mines and Landfill and the Fairlawn well field. But many others, like the Hackensack River, have been left out, and that changes today. It's our responsibility in Congress to make sure we're fighting for the resources we need here to clean up our waters, to keep our environment clean, and to fully protect our communities, our family, and our future. Just like President Kennedy declared in his moonshot speech, we all need to think big when it comes to cleaning up our environment and protecting our climate. To think long term. If we don't think big, if we don't work together to secure the resources we need, we'll never get there. And with the EPA moving forward with this proposal to add the lower Hackensack River to the Superfund program, I believe we can make even more progress to cleaning up our state and our country. And our efforts can't end here, though. We've got to keep fighting to protect our children from dangerous lead levels that threaten Jersey students' drinking water in schools. Just this week, I want to thank the state and the governor for moving to replace all lead water pipes in the next decade. And our which was phenomenal. And our bipartisan infrastructure package will do even more. It includes $55 billion in water infrastructure for clean water infrastructure to eliminate the nation's lead service lines and pipes. It's going to take a team effort to clean this up. And together we've had other great successes working with the state, make sure that we have central, easy-to-access school lead water reporting database for parents and communities to get up-to-date information on the dangerous lead water levels in their kids' schools. And a key piece of my bipartisan legislation, the Lead-Free Schools Act, was enacted into law, creating a targeted pilot program using existing resources to improve drinking water infrastructure in schools nationwide that have lead in their water. The bottom line is we're in front of what I'm hoping will be soon designated as a site, but we know that this takes every level working together. And I again want to thank the commissioner and the state. I want to thank my very, very dear friend and mentor, Bill Pasquale, for his leadership over the years. And I know that together we'll take care of protecting our children and our grandchildren here in the greatest country in the world. If we do steps like this, our best days will always be ahead of us. So thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Congressman. You know, we've spoken a bit this morning about partnership. And from the perspective of the Department of Environmental Protection, where we have so much to do in so many places, that work is only possible when we can build community capacity. And there are organizations throughout this state that work to support that effort, that get on the ground and build support and help educate folks about environmental imperatives. And there is one organization in particular and its leader that has made this moment possible, whose dedication has moved us forward in a tremendous way, who over the years held on to hope and kept fighting, and that's why we're here. So, Captain Bill of the Hackensack Riverkeeper, I thank you, sir.
Let me begin by thanking Commissioner LaTourette for assembling this crowd today, because for the past 18 or 19 months, I've been stuck talking to the wall because of COVID. Finally seeing human faces looking back at me while I'm talking makes me really happy. It was 5 or 6 years ago when Judith Ank, who Congressman Pasquale mentioned before, met with us at Hackensack Riverkeeper, and we discussed in very broad terms the idea of listing this river as a Superfund. And we found out that citizens, such as myself, could petition the United States Environmental Protection Agency to list this site as a Superfund. And my staff attorney, who was an intern at the time, wrote the petition letter that went to EPA, and it was welcomed with open arms by US EPA during the Obama administration. Unfortunately, New Jersey and the United States of America is a very political country, and once EPA started doing the research that they needed to do to back up the plan, the Christie administration would not let them move forward with listing the river. And I'm not afraid to say it was the Christie administration that refused to concur with EPA that this river was worthy of listing. When we were just about getting rid of Christie and his boys, another bad thing happened for this country, and that was the Trump administration. And so for 4 years, EPA basically went dark. And so we had a partner here, but in New York at Region 2, they were keeping their heads down and trying to continue to do their jobs, even though their leadership was basically committed to messing up their jobs and messing up this country. Well, here we are today. The planets have finally lined up in some kind of celestial order, and we have concurrence from the state of New Jersey, and I know when this gets back to Region 2, that Region 2 will welcome this concurrence with open arms. It took me a long time to get here. It took me a real long time to get here. When I first started Riverkeeper 24 years ago, I was asked by a reporter, why would you want to keep that river? And my response to him was, because people like you ask questions like that. This river needs somebody to be a watchdog. This river needed somebody to actually stand up for the river. And I took that on as my personal project, my livelihood, and my late life apprenticeship even, to become your Hackensack Riverkeeper. And I was not really in favor at first of listing this river as a Superfund, because I believed the right-wing politics that said, oh, the Superfund is just welfare for lawyers, and you don't want to get involved with that process because it'll never amount to anything, and everybody will get rich except you, Bill. But then I took a step back and listened to what I was being told and watched what needed to be done, and I realized that if I had to go out and Hackensack Riverkeeper had to sue every polluter that ever put their garbage, their waste, their contaminated materials into this river, I would need to live probably about 300 years to get through the court cases. And that's provided we win them. That's when I realized bringing forth the power of the federal government, bringing forth the power of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and bringing them here. You know, I'm not going to sell you any nonsense about how the river is going to be miraculously cleaned up. That's not going to happen. But what's going to happen is now, with the resources that the federal government and the state government can bring to the table, we're going to be able to study this river, get a plan made up, and then get to work on that plan. I refuse to stand by idly and let this project turn into welfare for lawyers. The Passaic River watershed bought enough cabanas and pools in people's backyards. We don't do that here. We get this river cleaned up and we give it back to you, the people that own it. The people of New Jersey, this is a public trust state. This boardwalk behind us is a boardwalk that I had installed 6 years ago. Because we needed public access up here in the northern waters. And this is a prime example of what I mean when I talk to regulators, when I talk to the DEP, or if I'm talking to anybody else, when I say we need adequate public access. That's why we need it. You see that boat going by back there? The boating public needs it. The fishing public needs it. And just people that enjoy the environment and the outdoors, they need it. And I promise you, I will do everything in my power as your riverkeeper to make sure that we keep everybody on track and move forward with this cleanup. I would like to see it become one of the most important Superfund cleanups ever undertaken by the US EPA, and prove to all those naysayers out there that the Hackensack River is good and it's getting better. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Captain Bill. And to every other environmental activist and conservationist who has supported the Riverkeeper and DEP and EPA in this pursuit, we thank you too. You know, a lot of reference has been made to the Passaic River and how long that cleanup, that characterization, and then cleanup has been taking. We have no intention for that to be the fate of the Hackensack. I will note that in the course of my career, We've seen the Passaic River take decades, and we've seen the Gowanus Canal cleanup take a fraction of that. I would like to see the Hackensack be more like the Gowanus than the Passaic, and I'll be happy to share that with EPA. You know, and Bill mentioned a really important point about how this is not our river. It doesn't belong to the federal government or the state government, right? Our job at DEP, you know, my job and the 3,400 people who work to protect our environment every day, we do that for the public because our air, our land, our water, doesn't belong to the government, doesn't belong to the governor or to me or the fine people of the DEP who work so hard every day to protect them. Those resources belong to the people, and you have our word that we will take good care of them for you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions?
We'll take some questions, sure. Can you guys stick around for some questions? All right, so happy to invite some of the press here that may want to ask some questions. Happy to take a few. Oh, can just come up a little bit. Sure. So the question asked is, at the end of the day, what is the potential for this when it's all cleaned up? So let me just start with how it works, right? So we are requesting today, I'm sure the letter is now sitting in my friend Walter Mugden's inbox, that the US EPA begin the process of listing the river. That will take a year. That's a bureaucratic process to make a formal rule that puts this on the Superfund list, right? We're not going to sit around while that happens. We've asked EPA to take early action, and we pledge to be good partners in doing that. We also want every responsible party that knows they have a stake in this river because they're connected to Superfund sites throughout this region to come together and come to the table. There's no reason not to because we all know how this ends. We all know that there's ultimate liability, so let's get to work. Let's not waste time and money and more time while our natural resources are unavailable to the public because that is a compensable loss and it serves no one for that debt to build. So we want early action, and I think that if anybody has been watching DEP and our work with the Attorney General, that coming in to work with our agency on the resolution of those liabilities serves anyone who carries that liability well. But we have to further sample and study this river, characterize the contamination, and then clean it up. That is a years-long process. But at the end of the day, we remove contamination from this river. We protect and cordon off the contamination that cannot be removed, so it is not accessible to any ecological uptake. And in the process of doing that, we send a signal to every community, every developer, every investor. Look what's happened around the Gowanus Canal in Brooklyn. Look at the economic development that drives, the jobs it brings. That's the future throughout this region. That's what we do, and we do it together. Yes?
To add to what the commissioner just said, I got to tell you, I grew up here in Secaucus. I'm a Hudson County boy through and through. And I grew up when this river was horribly, horribly polluted, and I was warned to not go near the river. And of course, that's where we went when we were kids because we were told not to do that. But the point I'm trying to make is I grew up believing that in order to enjoy clean water, to go swimming, to go fishing, to have some fun, I would have to endure sometimes a 2 to 3 hour drive down the Garden State Parkway in the middle of the summer in the back seat of a car that didn't even have air conditioning in the 50s and 60s, you know? When I started talking to people about recreation here in the Hackensack, all of a sudden people started saying, why would we do that? And I said, because you can. And we opened up our first paddling center here in Laurel Hill. We started taking people out on pontoon cruises to give them an idea of what's out there. And I hear every day from someone, I never knew this was here, even though a major interstate highway runs through both sides of the Meadowlands. They drive by 65, 70 miles an hour, and they don't take the time to look around and see the threatened and endangered species. They're upriver. And I want to make the invitation to both of you and to you, Sean. Anytime you feel like getting out on the water, just give Captain Bill a call.
We're going to pontoon.
That's right.
Good. We'll take you out
We're
there.
going to use Secaucus's boat.
I would characterize it right
And
today
anybody
as a victory lap.
Anybody we find in the river, we're bringing home.
Okay.
Congressman, do you have anything to add to that question?
Captain, I agree with you 100%. And when we talk about economic opportunity, in view of the question that was asked, the recreation in itself, I'll talk about industry or retail or whatever, as we've seen happen already, or people to live, roof over their heads. You add up all those things, it's quite impressive. But this is taking advantage of where we live, so we don't have to go 200 miles to find something. So people looking at this river say, you'll never get me to swim in that river, which I said about the Passaic before I took a couple of dunks. But the point of the matter is, you didn't have to go so far in your car. You found something here peaceful. Your family is safe, and all the opportunities that are going to develop because of people like yourself and people in the community that pressure and push us to do what we have to do. We're not just talking here. You know what you know of me knows. I'm a dog, and that's what you have to put up with me since you elected me. So anyway, and then when you get finished, you want somebody else, then you get somebody else. That's as simple.
I'll do it again.
You could confirm that I'm a dog? Thank you. Anybody else?
Other questions?
No, but it won't be.
No, this is billions, no, as any worthwhile project would be. But you have a choice. You have a choice.
Can I make a point about that, though?
Sure.
You know, you have to look at these things as investments. You have to make a decision. Are we going to invest to clean something up, and then, of course, reap the economic gains beyond the health gains, the community gains, right? If we can turn these sites around, suddenly you bring more businesses and people back to the areas. You then get, of course, all the ecotourism that will come with it, as we just talked about. Suddenly, you bring a lot of vibrancy back, and if you look at all the studies on this, when we clean up sites, the economic impact to the local economy and to the state's economy are significant everywhere we clean up. And I think you look at the return, it's a clear return on investment. When you fail and you walk away from a space and suddenly no one wants to be here, no one wants to go near it, it almost leaves behind wastelands around them. And that's what we've seen historically. It's part of why there's such a strong economic argument for cleaning up these sites. And of course, the polluters pay, right? You polluted this place, you should pay. And I think that's, because you're having such an impact on the economy and on people.
That's basically the problem we had on the Passaic River down by Newark. The polluters did not pay, and we had to go into courts. They used the Trump method. You want to sue me? Go to court, become bankrupt, and never get the answer. That's a hell of a way to run the railroads. I don't accept that. I don't accept that. And I'm sure many of you don't either. But we're going to see this through. If you saw the river in the Lindholm, it's a task of cleaning up the river. They worked during the pandemic and everything. They did a fantastic job. They actually accomplished something. Now, come on. You can't name many times when you could say the government helped accomplish something. But they really did. They did the job.
I didn't say that.
You don't say that? Oh.
Okay, I gotta go.
Any other questions?